Now we'll start. A very good afternoon to all of you, respected speaker, dear participant. I'm Milo Yaja from Department of Tourism and Hospitality Management, Mizoram University. Welcome you all for the second session of the second day for our Untitled FDP program on protection and management of heritage asset, key aspects and challenges, which will be delivered by our learned professor, Professor Sarit Kumar Chaudhuri. Professor Sudhir Kumar Chaudhuri is a noted anthropologist. He was a founding head and current head of Department of Anthropology, Rajiv Gandhi University, Arunachal Pradesh. He was the former director on deputation of Indira Gandhi Rashtriya Manav Sangrahalaya, National Museum for Mankind in Bhopal. Coming to his academic qualification, Professor Chaudhuri obtained his MS in Anthropology from University of Calcutta, PhD from Rajiv Gandhi University, Arunachal Pradesh, and postdoc in School of Oriental and African Study from University of London. And he also worked there for first 5 years in collaboration with British Museum, School of Oriental and African Study, Rajiv Gandhi University. And Professor is also a recipient of Young Scientist Award from Indian Science Congress Association. During his academic journey, Professor Chaudhuri visited educational institutes across the globe, such as Italy, Germany, UK, Ireland, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Nepal, and Singapore. Professor Chaudhuri contributed immensely to the development of anthropological research in Northeast India in last 30 illustrious years. Professor has authored 10 books and more than 60 plus research articles. Professor has also been a member of important association for various academic and council of members. And now we will listen from Professor Surit Kumar, sir. Sir, over to you.
Let me just have my slides today, and then I'll initiate whatever I want to share.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what I am requesting, if I start deliberation, and in the process this download part will be over, so that maybe at the last part of my speech I can show these slides. That will in that process we can minimize the time frame.
Definitely,
right?
sir.
So
No problem,
I think
sir.
No problem.
if we start, yeah, so the moment it is downloaded, you can then at the last part I can show the slides. It have been interesting much more while speaking simultaneously. So should I start this with this strategy?
Yes, sir.
Let me know.
Sure, sir.
Okay. So once again, good afternoon to all of you. I'm really sorry that this problem has not occurred in earlier occasion. So I thought of sharing this at the very morning itself when you have started the program, the first presentation, in fact. So let me, on my personal behalf, let me just welcome the coordinator of this Atal FD Faculty Development Program, Dr. Himanshu Bhushan Raut, who is also the head of the department. I'm really, initially when he contacted me, I was a little bit reluctant in a sense. I was having some other kind of involvement. But then I thought, let me try to share whatever I can in relation to the institution which I was involved for more than 5 years. Let me also welcome all the participants, quite substantial number, 105 I can see in the screen, who are part of this program. And I must say I have missed yesterday's keynote address by Professor S.N. Patnaik, whom I have very high regards for him. But I am fortunate enough to listen to your Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Rao, who has shared some of his comments and his basically concern about the university and in the context of the Mizoram itself, the society and he tried to share certain things, how the question of promotion and preservation of the cultural heritage within the institutional frame, within the university can be achieved. And he narrated some of his possible course of action. In fact, that itself has given me some kind of an ground to talk before you what museum today, the museum which I was associated with for more than 5 years as a director, which is called popularly IGRMS, Indira Gandhi Rashtriya Manav Sangrahalaya, but it is also called at the National Museum of Mankind. So what I basically propose to talk about that how this institution, which I am talking about, this is an ethnographic museum. Some of you must be aware of. This was established in 1978, right? At the city of Bhopal, with 200 acres of land. So you can understand the vastness of this, the institution in terms of the physical space. But within this existence of more than almost 45 years, I think this 200 acres of physical space could have been transformed into cultural space. And that in the process, it has started a kind of an new museum movement in our country, right? This is a museum which some people call it IGRMS is a museum of museums, but some people also say perhaps it is the one of the finest ethnographic museum in Asia. Now I can, what I intend to say that what exactly we mean by the new museum movement, why IGRMS is related to that, and in the process, what kind of activities, what kind of initiatives which we used to take care within this institutional frame and beyond, so that and how it relates to the representation of not only the tribal, I just want to add the folk culture also. The nurturing cultural heritage of the tribes and the folk communities, and at the same time, how this has actually helped in terms of what we call the revitalization of the cultural heritage. That part I will come with some examples to make you understand that, I mean, how it is possible, the question of revitalization of culture and how museum as a cultural space can do that kind of an job. Let me tell that so far the IGRMS is concerned, some of the basic agenda, as you know, in 21st century, museum is no more, what I'll suggest that some of you who are administering can see that file is already transferred. So whenever possible, you can share it also. I think it is, this has been sent to coordinator Dr. Himanshu Bhushan Raut. So you can, whenever possible, you can share it. Okay, let me tell that in 21st century, museum is no more looked at a kind of an place, right, which is a kind of an house of curiosity, or the so-called the conventional sense of what we call the Jadughar. In 21st century, we strongly believe that museum can be serve the purpose or as an institution of learning. It can also be an institution for the empowerment of the communities. And this can also lead to certain kind of circular dialogue between past, present, and future, so that we can understand a holistic or the comprehensive journey of mankind. Now, this is, you can say, the fundamental agenda with which this institution has initiated by involving people across the the subject domain, disciplinary domain. It is not only the anthropologists, poets, creative writers, many people across the domain, they remained involved in nurturing the idea of this museum. Now, what I'll briefly and broadly share, that basically, I mean, some broad ideas, what we are intending to do and how we are looking at the question of the issue of the heritage, question of the representation of tribes and folk communities heritage, and how this has nurtured within the frame which I was talking about. Can you go to this is the, you can see this is the entry, one of the entry gate of the museum. I don't know whether any one of you, the participant, ever visited this museum. This is also actually a kind of a traditional gate which is found in Uttarakhand, those areas which are brought from that place and then installed. Let me just tell you one of the, you can change the slide. One of the key component of this museum initiative is bringing community at the center stage. So whatever we do within the institutional frame or beyond, it's the community who remained at the core. They actually work as the co-curator, whether it's an exhibition, whether it's an installation within the museum premises in Bhopal. We have another museum in our Southern Regional Center in Mysore also, which is placed in one of the heritage building, which is called Wellington House in Mysore, that I'll also show you. Next. You can see the location wise, it is fascinating space, 200 acres of land surrounded by the what is called the Bada Talab of Bhopal, almost 18 kilometers stretch of lake, and the museum is surrounded by that lake itself. Okay, next slide. As I already talked about, that we have not only in Bhopal, we have also our center in Mysore. Now, these are the some of the activities which we generally taken care of within the institutional frame. There are some certain things which are conventional practices which any museum, irrespective of their location, must be doing. But there are some other activities which are completely departure from what you find in other national museums of our country, whether it is in Delhi or Calcutta Museum. Next. Yeah, this is the Mysore which I was referring about. It's not huge, but this is also fascinating museum, just centrally located within the city of Mysore. Next. Yeah, you can have little fast. Now, we have different, okay, keep it, just fix it here. We have different kinds of exhibition. As I told, the 200 acres of physical space we have divided into different kinds of cultural space. Now, one of our major exhibition, which we call the open air exhibition. Museum conventionally, any kind of exhibits you find within the, four walls, right? But the most important departure which this museum has done, that is the question of installation of open air exhibition. That is one of the strongest achievement in terms of the question of cultural representation or the representation of heritage. Now, this is one part of, it's a huge area, what we call tribal habitat. Let me explain it so that you can understand what you are seeing. This is a, I don't know how many of you can recognize, this is a Shantal, a tribal settlement. Shantal may be known, it's not only in Bengal, they are also distributed in many eastern regional states. Now, this is the traditional house of the Shantals. In tribal habitat, what we have done, some of the almost now number is around 40. Not a kind of an replica, let me tell you. This is the house, every material of the house brought from the respective tribes, communities came, they stayed for months, and they have installed this kind of houses. And you will see in Bhopal, there is a institution which deals with the architectural, I mean, the famous architectural institution. What we have tried to exactly exhibit or nurturing the what we call the traditional or vernacular architecture. And every year, the newly admitted students of this architectural institute, they will come and study all these the what we call indigenous or vernacular architecture. Show you some of the slides, and this is one of the most popular cultural space within the museum. Some of you must be knowing about this fascinating architecture. This is the Toda house, Todas of the Nilgiri Hills. Again, this is not replica. Todas came, they constructed, and in alternative year, Toda people come, celebrate their different kinds of rituals, festivals, and in the process, they maintain their all these traditional architectural. Next. Yeah, this is from the Rajasthan. I'll just go a little fast so that you can, this is also, we have a desert village. So the traditional houses, which is part of our desert structure, this is from Rajasthan, Haveli we have brought. Now this one from Arunachal. I'm not aware how many of you are aware, this Sheddukpen, there is a Buddhist tribe in Arunachal. Now this is an traditional house of the Sheddukpen tribes. Sheddukpen people went and established it. And at the inaugural day, you can see the group photographs. Yeah. Again, we have the Himalayan village where different these kinds of again the vernacular architecture from different Himalayan region. People brought and established this kind of elements of their cultural heritage. Next. This is from Ladakh, basically. If you can just go back to from the Ladakh, we have not established the huge Ladakhi houses, but this is basically a kitchen of the Ladakhi, which is representing the Ladakhi culture, and this is their sacred symbols, money. And people from Ladakh, you can see, every year during the time of Losar festival, people from Ladakh, they come to our campus. They will replace their flags and other things, and they will clean the surrounding areas. Even they have cultivated certain kinds of traditional the plants which can sustain in the environment in Bhopal. So in the process, what I am trying to say, the involvement, bringing community at the foreground. It is not the certain curators of the museum taking all planning and doing the job. It is basically the community's involvement through which we try to build up, try to preserve or promote the heritage of those people itself. Now, this is one mythological trail. Let me just have a few words. Next slide you go, you can see the entry of the trail. In the sense of cultural heritage, many a time we talk about cultural heritage can be defined in two segments, tangible and intangible part. Though the delineation of boundaries between these tangible and intangible many a time becomes difficult because sometimes they are so much of intertwined with each other. Now, this is an experiment made by the tribal people from different parts of our country. You must be aware of that most of the tribes have a very rich oral tradition, which is reflected in the form of their myths, their legends, right? Their oral tales. I know these are different oral genres and it has different meaning. Now, what they have tried an experiment, that the different kinds of myths which they are having, they have tried to, if we take it as a kind of their intangible heritage, they have tried to experiment with certain mediums, which may be in the form of mud, which may be in the form of terracotta elements, or different kinds of wood carving and other experiments, right? And through those mythical tales, legends, they have transformed into different kinds of tangible elements, right? This is an experiment, and this is one of the most popular cultural sites within the museum space. Now, this is basically just wanted to show how people, what are you talking about in relation to tribal habitat or Himalayan village or even coastal village, how people are getting involved, coming with a certain interval, and they go on repairing their different house structures. So the point which I was trying to bring again and again, how the community's involvement in the whole process. It is not the curatorial exercise which you find in most of the other museum spaces. Now, this is a kind of, and perhaps I don't know how many thousands of photographs of this hanging cane bridge is shared by the visitors. Now, this is constructed by some of the Adi tribes of Arunachal. This is a cane bridge which is very dominant in the state of Arunachal. Even the Siang River is also, will find a huge such cane bridge over the rivers also. Now, these Adi people came from Arunachal and they have constructed a bridge. And you can see the Adis are at the down photograph, they are from Arunachal. And the canes, which are the normal, it's not the normal cane which you see in the market. These are canes brought from the high altitude areas, right? Which is much more durable. And this fascinating bridge on a water space they have built up. And this is adjacent to a place, what we call, we have a traditional technology park. I'll show some of the photographs of that park also. I'm not going into the different kinds of galleries which we are having within the permanent place. You can see and can understand. We have more than 28,000 of artifacts collected largely from different communities across India, along with some of the artifacts which came from different other parts of the world. Now, this is the, let me just take to here. This is a very interesting area which is very popular with the school children, you will see. We talk about our traditional technological knowledge, right? A lot of people, indigenous knowledge and other things. What we have done, an experiment, we have taken our simple rural technologies, you can say, whether it is water harvesting, whether it is the pressing of oil, whether it is making of different kinds of other things that we have collected from different, even iron smelting, the traditional technology which are used by the people of Manipur, but for iron smelting, or even for salt making, traditional salt making, those we have tried to demonstrate within this, what we call traditional technology park. And the bridge which you have seen right now, that is also adjacent to this traditional technology park, because that bridge itself talks about the traditional technological knowledge of the people of Arunachal. So, okay, just next slide. You can see this is the people from Manipur, the Meitei group. They came and they are demonstrating the visitors how they make traditional salts out of the water which they have in a certain sources in Manipur. I have personally visited those areas also. Okay, Professor Patnaik was standing there, you might have seen. This is also traditional way of iron smelting, which they have done in the villages. Next. And this is the way, you will see that husking, how this kind of rural technology used for different livelihood, simple livelihood strategies, but we try to preserve it and promote it and bring into the knowledge of the younger generation so that they remain conscious about our, I'll say, the rural heritage. Next. And this is also just last slide. I just give an idea. Every month in IGRMS, living the pandemic period, which has devastated almost all cultural institutions of our country, average our visitors in a month is around 18,000 per month, which includes in different seasons. I'm talking about average. It has seasonal implications also. There are a large number of children from different areas of not only the MP, other states also, they come and visit our museum, especially the open air exhibitions. This is in the same traditional technology park. You can see the children are around. Okay. Let me just also tell, keep it here. IGRMS, we are neither Bhopal-centric nor Mysore-centric. These are the two institutions we have. Our agenda is to work across the political boundaries of the state. So, though we are having, our institutional presence in Bhopal and in Mysore, in every state, we try to extend our work so that the question of the involvement of the communities can be practiced in real sense. And we also not only work with the major national institutions, like this is an exhibition which is going on in Calcutta, basically in Indian Museum, Calcutta. I am coming about the object later on. This is a very fascinating object which has traveled different parts of the world, including France. This is a single object exhibition. Some of you, if you are any participants from Manipur, you may know this is a kind of an pobilai, which has a very symbolic, mythical significance for the Meitei community. And this is made by a very famous woodcarver who is no more, in fact, but it's a single, almost 40 feet, single piece of log. This object is carved, right? And this is considered one of the most precious object in our collection. As I told, it has internationally traveled to different parts of the world also. Next. This is again back to that, what we call the tribal habitat, showing the indigenous architectural and aesthetic domain. This is a person called Neil MacGregor. Those who are aware about the British Museum, he is the longest served director of British Museum, who came to our museum when the Ladakhi people in our campus, there was some celebration going on. So Neil MacGregor came for just 20 minutes and he spent more than two hours in our campus, IGRMS campus. And before leaving, he has given a to the media. Obviously, when Neil MacGregor in IGRMS, there are a lot of media people came. And Neil MacGregor openly told before the media, this is one of the finest museum I have seen in my life. Neil MacGregor doesn't need to satisfy me, right? But just this is the perception which I wanted to tell you. Now in museum, beyond this exhibition, we do different kinds of practices to again, bringing people in the museum and taking museum people also to different other parts. Now what we do, please keep it here. We bring what we call the master craftsman, whether it is a potter, whether it is a woodcarver, whether it is a metal craft person, or the performing artist, whether dance, music, right, instruments. So in different parts of the year, not only in Bhopal or Mysore, along with different universities also, we have done the program where we have brought the cultural performer from one state to another. At the same time, we try to build up a kind of an community linkage with the people of that respective states also. So this back and forth movement remains always at the core agenda of the institution or the institutional practices. This is a festival which every year is done with the help of what we call the Madhya Pradesh state government, their education department. And the title of the festival is Balram, which is basically a festival of the children, where children from different schools, representative of major states of our country, including Northeast. During my time, I tried to ensure that every 8 Northeastern state represent such festival, children's festival. Now this creates an opportunity for them to come to show or display their cultural practices. At the same time, they get a chance to have a look towards such museum space. So it's a kind of building a kind of an awareness with the new generations. Now this is again an important introduction. This is found only in IGRMS. Perhaps it became possible for us because of the huge space which IGRMS is having. What we called the sacred complex, right? The idea of sacred group, those who are from the background of forest or have some idea about the conservation issues, if you are aware, you must be aware of that. This is a kind of a tradition. What we, in English version, we talk about sacred group. In other sense, it talks about the conservation, different kinds of practices, ritual practices largely, which has helped in terms of conservation of our forest resources. Look at the works of Madhav Gadgil, all the eminent conservation practitioners. Sacred group given a very important input in terms of our conservation heritage. And in IGRMS, we could have established such conservation practices in a sense of bringing from different states. This is, some of you can understand, this is the Khashi people of Meghalaya. Meghalaya, among the Khashis, this practice of sacred group is very, very dominant, right? So they have installed their shrines and other things within the IGRMS domain. And every alternative year, people from Meghalaya, they come, have that ritual practices. And it is not only Meghalaya or different southern states. You can show some of the other slides also. Can you, yeah, this is from the Kani tribe of Kerala, right? Some of you who have some idea about the ethnomedicinal tradition of the Kani tribes, you must be aware of. So from Kerala also, we have this kind of an establishment of sacred groups. Now, this is basically in relation to this is from Manipur, Laiharoba festival. This is also a kind of a celebration of their, directly linked with their, the idea of sacred group in Manipur. Yeah, next slide. Next one, this is, okay, okay, you just stick to here. Now, as I told that we have established linkages with the communities across the states. And this is an example which I wanted to give you. In the state of Manipur, you can see the Mary Kom, our legendary boxer, is very much here. Now, we had a for a long time, we have a linkages with the Kom villages of Manipur, where we were traditionally running a village museum, right, with the help of the village people. Now, Mary Kom, who also represents the Kom tribe, he has from his MP-led fund prepared a 3-storied building in the villages, and the whole complex, including that the building, has given to IGRMS, where we have opened a cultural interpretation center, right? And through that cultural interpretation center, we are doing multiple activities, linking the hill tribes and the people of the plains, right? different kinds of activities. There is a slide which you can show later on. If you shift to the next slide, I can tell you. Yeah, next. So what we are doing, we are having the storytelling session with the village elders, with the children, right? Surrounding the museum, that cultural interpretation center. We have different kinds of programs along with the village children through that cultural interpretation center located in Manipur, which is given to us by Mericom. We are nurturing that kind of practices. Many of the, for example, the storytelling tradition of the Kom tribes, these are gradually getting vanished from the community base. So we are trying to bring back those kind of the tradition, cultivating and nurturing that kind of storytelling tradition in the villages. And we have people who are got local level employment through, we could have generated through this kind of an institutional practices. Okay, next. Next slide. Yeah, this is, we do large number of workshop involving the different tribal artists, basically from different parts of India. Let me tell you, not only we do, practice, take the people in their original place, do the workshop, we take people from one state to the other also, so that a kind of bridging the gap, that kind of things we try to always promote through our institutional mechanism. Now, this is a new initiative which during my tenure, I have initiated. It's a national level tribal literature festival. Many of us talk about Jaipur Literature Festival, which has gained an international ground. I have talked to the people who actually initiated the Jaipur Literature Festival before initiating this national level program. So we have created the platform. It is not just literature. People from, you are in Mizoram, you can understand the potentialities of the tribal writers, how they are coming on from Mizoram, in Nagaland, many Arunachal also. So what we have tried to basically create a kind of a national platform. So once in a year, anybody from any parts of the country who are associated with different forms of literary activities, whether the textual or oral, they can come and participate in the festival. And it is not only restricted for the tribal, anybody from the city, there is a huge, massive participation from the state of Madhya Pradesh. And you will be happy to know that the Parliament Standing Committee, and they have also taken huge interest in this kind of an initiation of national level tribal literature festival. And this is a kind of an inauguration of festival. Now this is, next slide. Next. Yeah. Now this is going on since long. We talk about the tribal healing tradition, right? If you can go back to the slide. Now, IGRMS, again, at the national level, we are not doing it in Mysore or Bhopal. We are doing it in different parts of our country. Every year, or at least alternative year, we are doing a national level tribal healers workshop, right? So that it is not only the exchange of ideas, how this healing workshop, national level workshop, made an impact with the tribes. If anybody is interested to know that, I can tell you the fascinating impact which has created on this workshop at the national level. But we do it at the national level, and we have excellent documentation. Anybody interested to have any kind of such workshop, you can write to IGRMS. You can get a national level, the list of healers, that kind of things you can ready-made, you can obtain from there also. Now this is part of the contemporary musical tradition in the context of Northeast. Some of the bands may be Soulmate, some of the bands you may be aware of from Nagaland, different Assam, Meghalaya. So every year we have the foundation day, and during the foundation day in the month of March, what we do, we try to focus on a state or a region, and then we try to celebrate what about the cultural heritage of that state or the region, whether it is in the form of the music, obviously that takes a major part, exhibitions, food festival. There are multiple activities. It went on for 3 days, right? And the people of Bhopal, they wait for this kind of the foundation day celebration. Next. Now, this is a new cultural space we have created during my tenure that we called, India has such a vast pottery tradition, right? Pots are not, definitely you are aware, not for only as an utensils, it has a ritual significance, it has linked with the marriage, institutional practices, it may be linked with their death rituals also. So India is having a very vast and diverse pottery tradition. So we have built up a huge space. We have given the name Kumar Pada, where we try to accommodate the diverse pottery tradition. If somebody visit that place, you can get an idea how the vastness and richness of our pottery tradition in the context that we have tried to build up a whole area based on that kind of an diversity of pottery tradition. Next. Now, there are many films, documentaries that are now shooted in that kind of an space. I was talking about food festival, which we do very frequently within the museum complex. Next. This is the entry point of the, you can see the Gond tribe of Central India. They have created that space. This is a pot tower. It's a village tradition in Manipur. I don't know whether any one of you have seen that. You can see the pottery exhibitions. These are the all women potters. They have made from Manipur. They have created a space within this, the Kumar Pada, which I am talking. What I wanted to always address, it is not just making the pots and exhibiting. The whole process is documented, and IGRMS is having an excellent archive where you can get this detailed visual documentation of different crafts and art tradition of our country, whether rural, folk, or even the so-called mainstream, the art tradition also. Yeah. The next one. I'll come back and I'll just end up with coming 3-4 slides. This is a house of the Wangchus. Wangchu is a tribe in Manipur, in Arunachal. Let us keep it in that frame, right? Don't just go back to the last slide. Yeah, keep it here. Now we have built up a house which is one of the biggest indigenous architecture within the campus, and you can see how the Wangchu people came. We have collected the material. Wangchu villages are at the border of Nagaland, right? This is from the Longding area. So every element of the house is collected from the village, and then villagers carried it through the transport. We have taken it to the Bhopal, and then people came, stayed almost 45 days and constructed the huge, massive house. It is not only the house, every aspects, material components, what we call the tangible aspects of heritage, are also part of that house. And I'll just go to the next slide, which I wanted to talk about in terms of, look at this structure. I don't know how many of you are aware about this. Some of you definitely. This is perceived as perhaps one of the biggest musical instrument. It is a log drum made of wood, and you can see the kind of curvature, wood carving they have done by the Wangchus. It is the day when this log drum was publicly exhibited, inaugurated for the public domain. Now, let me just tell this. This has a very symbolic meaning for the Wangchus, and this is true for the Naga tribes, many of the Naga tribes also. Now, you can see some of people are beating the drums, what technically in their local language, they call it kham. Now, every beat of that drum, they have different kinds of sounds they produce, and every sound have a cultural meaning. You, myself, somebody else which is beyond that community may not understand that. For example, if there is a fire in the village, they will immediately, villagers will have a typical sound so that the other villages, even 10-kilometer distance, they can understand that there is a fire in the village. So people organize themselves immediately according to that frame. During the days of headhunting, I'm using this word headhunting. I know the suffixing of hunting has a lot of debates on this issue. I'm not going into that debate. Now, whether a village will survive or not, it depends on how efficiently people can, right, manipulate the villagers by having a specific beating of sounds through which people will understand, the villagers will understand that there is an enemy attack. So they will immediately organize themselves. Otherwise, the whole village may be wiped out, maybe within a few hours. When they are going for seed sowing, cultivation, they will have a typical sound. So all villagers will gather together and they will proceed for their Jhum cultivation. And finally, I'll say that if you are aware about how these log drums are brought from the villages, interior forest areas to their village areas, that itself is a fascinating story about their sensibility with the nature, right? They have excellent kind of, you can say, the ritual chanting or singing, in fact, where they try to beg pardon from every creature of the forest and tell that we are taking this log for we need it extremely important for our life. So we are taking this log, please pardon us. That's a fascinating understanding about their nature culture linkages with the Wangchus. What I want to say now, this tradition is not part of Wangchu culture today. If you visit the Wangchu areas, hardly we found that this kind of an lockdowns part of the dormitory or the chief's house, because I'll not say the Christianity, I'll say there are multiple reasons which are responsible for wiping out the institution of dormitory. So if you village log drum, which remains very symbolic to their soul of the Wangchu culture, hardly visible in the village. But once they have installed in our museum, then it has got a huge publicity in the local media, in the national media. And that has created a kind of a sensation within the villagers. And after that, I received the phone calls from the villagers after 1 year that within the village, they have again started this tradition of carving such fascinating musical instrument they call kham. Now, this can be taken as an instrument. I can give multiple examples which talks about how museum can indirectly play a role for the revitalization of the lost cultural heritage or the tradition, whatever you call. Museum can really become an important institution to nurture this kind of practices, right? The last slide. This is again one of the fascinating house from the Nagaland, Chakesang House, one of the major attraction in terms of our tribal habitat, which is fascinating to the visitors. If you visit any point of time, I just briefly and broadly touched some of the major activities which we try to carry forward within the institutional frame. But in process, basically what I wanted to say that in the 21st century, how museum can involve the community, and in the process they can nurture and promote the diverse cultural heritage which are part of our civilizational journey, right? With this, let me wind up, but definitely I'll be happy if you have any kind of inquiries. I must try to respond. But before I end, I'll appeal all of you, even including students across the department, they visit IGRMS. In course of time, if you get a chance, please visit. I can little bit talk about the institution, but it actually need to be understood through your personal experience. With this, let me wind up here. But again, yes, as I told, if you have certain queries, I'll try my best to respond to that. Thank you.
Dear participant, if you have any question related to this session, kindly drop down in our chat box. Thank you, Professor Chaudhuri. It was an elaborate, insightful, and interesting session. And we also believe that our participant must also have learned something interesting about museum and your work in your journey. Sir, there is one question in our chat box. What kind of material is used? Nilesh V. Misra, sir, is it in the last slide?
I want to know what kind of a material they are using for construction, and whether they also take into account earthquake resistant feature in that, because many of the places, the traditional construction, they take care for whatever the natural calamities were there or the environmental effect. So of course Mizoram has a lot of rainfall, so the big leaf they can take care for the leaf, whether but how exactly they take care for the earthquake, as Mizoram also comes in the earthquake region.
So I think if you look at the indigenous architectural forms of many of the communities of Northeast, beyond tribe or other ethnic categories, if you think of, the whole idea of bamboo structure, piles house, actually linked with that kind of an ideas. The kind of nature and the kind of rainfall which is catering the whole region. Now, what, as I told, that so far the construction of the houses are concerned, where we do not have, the curators doesn't have their modernized inputs to make the structure more durable or not. Our basic intention is how the community construct their own house, that we want to reflect in toto, right? And there should not be any kind of our intervention in the sense of replacing a leaf by the woods or by the tins. If you go to the traditional villages today, many of the traditional roofs, which was by the grass or different varieties of roofs, are by and large replaced by the tin roofs, which they believe much more durable. It has its own logic, but in the process we are losing that kind of the kind of its efficacies, the traditional house, in the context of the nature within which they are located. So we don't interfere in their construction process, right?
Sir, we have one more question from Jagdish Behera, sir. Is there any concept of museum of intangible product or services?
Intangible products or if the participants is here, can you a little bit explain it? I can say, so far the IGRMS is concerned, right? As I told, we have an excellent archive, which has a huge documentation of what we perceived in terms of the oral tradition, which is part of our intangible heritage, right? So that is there. I mean, I had talked about how one experiment is made, transforming the intangible to tangible aspects also. Now, so far the intangible products and services, the question is not very clear to me, but what I can tell, as a museum, we try to promote and nurture the intangible heritage of the people. Let me tell it in a very clear terms that IERMS is not a tribal museum. That not be misconstrued, because I'll just can tell you, you can think about any of the master performer of our classical Indian musical tradition, whether Pandit Yasraj, who has died recently, whom I could brought him within our IGRMS campus. Every year we are having classical Indian music program. No, so it's not just kind of an travel museum. We should not make that kind of an idea. Yeah? It's a museum which is representing the diverse tradition of our country, but definitely we have little bit more focus in relation to what we perceived as the marginal people or rural or tribal heritage. No, there may be certain people may debate on that issue of whether they constitute any heritage or not. But as I am staying in this, what we call the India's Northeast for last 30 years, I think we definitely believe that the so-called tribal or folk people, they have contributed tremendously in understanding or constructing our nation building process and in the sense of our Indian heritage.
Is there any more question, dear participant?
Somebody was talking about sacred grove. Is one of the group need to be protected? As I inquired, it comes under HRCE because it has the patches of forest and it doesn't come under the forest department. What be the ways? Now, I mean, why we have not meet has this issue is discussed in international forum where ICOM was doing a session. Why IGRMS try to nurture the sacred group tradition? Sacred group as an English equivalent concept, but there are so much of local concept for that. We don't intend to a kind of creating so much of sacred groups within which is physically not possible to accommodate every sacred group, which is part and parcel of our Indian tradition. But in the process, whatever we have done, we wanted to nurture that idea that this is a kind of an community-based practice which has a meaning in terms of the preservation of our natural resources. Here, obviously, the forest itself, and how we can promote or engage people who are still practicing that tradition, and in the process, we create a sensation, a kind of an awareness movement, so that we don't forget about these institutional or community-based practices. In Bhopal, we have IIFM, Indian Institute of Forest Management. Now, after so much of inputs in terms of our management skills and syllabus, even today we have understood that there are so much still to learn from the people, from their the knowledge system, right? Sacred group is just one very important dimension in that respect, which we wanted to protect, right? So as an institution, yes, we can also bring that kind of an practice, sacred group, which is referred. But in order to protect and preserve, it is the community who are involved with this kind of an practices. They have to take the lead. They are political leaders. They are community-based leaders. They have to take a call how to, preserve or promote this kind of an traditional practices for the conservation of natural resources.
Sir, there is one more question What are the measures taken by museum to promote local community livelihood?
Yeah, I can
From
tell.
Dr. Rajesh Ramasamy.
Okay. As I told, I have just tried to focus a few aspects. What we do, as I told, within the Bhopal, within the Mysore, we do it in a, thoroughly across the year, but in different parts of our country also, we do workshop. And then the products, we try to, at the end of the workshop, brought this product for the sale. Right?
Harpur Singh, please mute yourself. Harpur Singh, please mute yourself. Harpur Singh, please mute yourself. Yes, sir, it's fine now.
Okay. What the last part of my tenure, as per the ministry's decision, what we have done, we have built up a tie-up with different, today through Amazon, you are getting so many things. So what we have done, a kind of an MOU we have signed, so that we are collecting the different artifacts from the people in their prices, and through that kind of an this national or international marketing agencies, we are trying to sell it to the catering the need of the wider people, in terms of, in the process they are also strengthening some amount of their livelihood strategies, definitely.
There's one more question on Orani group and ways to protect its
I already responded this.
Okay,
I already
yes, yes.
responded this. Yeah,
Okay,
it's
sir.
related to sacred group.
Okay, okay, sir.
The last one, I can see that what is your views about pro-poor tourism in heritage destination? What I'll say, the department who are doing this, they must be having a much clearer and transparent response to this. But what I like to say that if you look at the campus Bhopal, for example, forget about the Mysore campus where we don't charge a single rupees. But for Bhopal, initially it was 10 rupees, but during my 5 years tenure, I made it 50 rupees, because this is a place where you can go and spend your whole day. Even spending one day, you cannot see that museum completely, right? Our indoor museum takes one day if you want to see it in carefully. So this is a cultural space or institution where you don't need much investment of money. If you look at, as I told, we have average 17 to 18,000 visitors per month. And if somebody study the economic background of the visitors, which includes lot of what we call relaxation in terms of fees also we give when people come in a group. For the children, it is completely free. School children, 50% discount. But still, as you know, it's a part of a national institution. And every national institution, including our central university, the ministry thinks about that we should also generate certain amount of revenue, right? Those days are gone when you can think about central university, so everything will be will go on in that scale. So obviously, we are also told to generate at least some revenue from the institutional frame. And by adding to 50 rupees, I was able to generate almost 1 crore as a revenue out of nothing. Earlier, we have hardly 10 rupees and the concession, it hardly comes any substantial figure. But if you look at 50 rupees as a fee, I think people can afford, and director have the power. If somebody, some group, disadvantages people, they come and appeal, give an application. We have that kind of provision also, where that can be taken into consideration. And there are so much of such things we received every year, and we try to accommodate. because ultimate purpose, it's not the revenue generation. If you go by the UNESCO's definition or ICOM definition, they will say museum is a non-profit organization. But you cannot deny the existential part or the practical sense of running an institution if you are sitting in the chair. So we had certain charges, but I think people, even the low income group, I'll say, if you have a study, you can understand there are so many visitors from that kind of an background is also part of our visiting. And so for the doing the program, who are part of the, practitioner of different heritage practices, I'll say, whether potters or wood carvers, who are in, we brought them, we give them as per the government norm, pay them every member, and then we try to, in that way, it becomes a kind of an activities in their helping in terms of their livelihood. I'll just add one information. Every winter or summer, we organize different summer schools or winter schools. And as I taught, we brought the master painters or craftsmen or different kind of, from different communities, different states. And when I joined in this institution in 2014, I met many lady members who came to meet me. They got training from this kind of courses, and they are now running independently different smaller institution, right, where people are coming and learning from them. It may be the Gond art or different forms of tribal arts or different other rural crafts. So in that sense, this kind of a museum practices, which is beyond their conventional notion of looking at the museum where 15th August or 26th January will hold our hand to our grandparents and drop into the museum, that ideas has gone, right? Museum today, as I told, can really perform as an institution of empowerment in multiple sense, maybe in the sense of economy, which somebody was asking about. In many other sense, it can work. And I can give you plenty of such references, how it has brought benefit to the communities, largely the rural and tribal communities of our nation.
Dear participant, I guess there is no question.
So, Dr. Milo, you can conclude now.
Yes, sure, sir. Thank you so much, Professor Chaudhuri. It was an elaborated and interesting topic, and you made session very interesting. And we also would like to thank you so very much for taking out time for this session. And we also believe that our participant must have learned something interesting about museum heritage and how it is important to restore our culture and heritage for future generation. And my special thanks goes to all the participants for their cooperation and for being patient listener and to participate actively in our Q&A session. And with this, we would like to conclude this session. So
sir, thank you. Personally, I want to thank you for your kind acceptance, and you have delighted our FDP program. And Professor Sarit Chaudhuri is a big name, and I am fortunate enough to get you as an eminent speaker in our FDP, sir. So I'll remain obliged to you. You have cooperated a lot, sir.
Thank you.
Professor Surit Kumar, sir. Sir, is it possible to share your PPT so that we can share to our participants? Because everybody is asking about PPT, sir.
Madam Milo, it is already with us.
Yes. Okay. Right. Yes.
You can use it if you need with acknowledging the IGRMS, not me, so that that becomes technically correct.
Yes, sir.
And
Sure.
also thanks to all of you, especially the organizers, for giving me the chance to share some of my brief and broad thinking in relation to being part of such a fascinating institution. I must say that we have done a cultural heritage. I didn't talk about the publication domain. We have done a cultural heritage series of taking all northeastern states. We have already published the Assam volume, Manipur volume, Meghalaya and Sikkim volume. Manohar done the Indian edition. Rudlej is done the international edition. And the Mizoram volume, right now, Nagaland volume will come any day. Mizoram volume is also on the way. I did it in the Mizoram, but at that point of time, I could not connect with Mizoram University. I did it with a college, but it was fascinating experience to be part of Mizoram. Thank you.
Sir, we are blessed to have you. Sir, I'm from Arunachal. Sir, we are blessed to have you in our state.
Thank you.
And dear participant, we will resume our next session at 2:30. We will take a lunch break of 1 hour. So please join on time. See you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. We will see you again.